Donc je pense que notre politique est la bonne.
I believe our policy is the correct one. It's based on the courage of President Bazoum, on the efforts of our diplomats and our ambassador in Niger, who will stay despite pressure from coup leaders. We do not recognize them. We support the president, who's not resigned.
Il n'a pas démissionné.
Just a few months back, French President Emmanuel Macron strongly said that the French ambassador and troops would stay in Niger and that he does not recognize a military junta. Later, when he saw it did not work, he got behind the regional bloc like ECOWAS and used his special puppet in the region, Nigerian President Tinubu. He was tasked to use all kinds of pressure and sanctions to bring Niger to its knees. That's why President Tinubu got questionable but special treatment when he met the French president. He embraced Macron, kissed his wife, and enjoyed it. All this was done so enough enemies of Niger could be created that could reverse the coup and bring back the famous West puppet, Mohamed Bazoum. However, that did not work, and now, France has decided to stoop to the lowest level. French President Emmanuel Macron has not offered a hefty bribe to the Niger junta leaders. Perhaps he thought the bribe would be accepted and Bazoum would be brought back to power. But what the Niger's junta did shocked not only Macron but the entire Europe. So, what did it do? Let's know about that in this video.
In other words, there is a sense in which we in Africa condone and encourage thieves. And in any event, in many African countries, most of those who are elected into public office are thieves. And once you elect thieves into public office, then you can rest assured that nothing will happen when they occupy public office.
PLO Lumumba had once rightly said that most of the leaders elected in Africa are thieves. It's quite against what the West advocates, which proclaims that democratically elected leaders work for the welfare of the common people. That's not more than just an illusion, because the West has mostly influenced the elected African leaders and presidents. In order to stay in power, they always accepted to follow the West's orders without caring for their people. However, whenever military leaders came, they completely changed the country for the average people, offering them facilities. Take the example of Thomas Sankara, who changed the entire picture of Burkina Faso, and people remember him to this day. Instead of selling the country's resources at the lowest prices to the West, they monetized them to establish industries and production plants that can prosper their countries. And this cannot be tolerated by the West. Even if the West proclaims to support developing countries, it never wants them to be fully self-sufficient and independent. That's why, when Niger's elected president, who was working as the West's puppet, was overthrown, and the military junta took over, the West became united in opposing the military rule. It's because the West knew that if the junta ruled, they could no longer exploit resources. But what has the French president done to make Niger's junta reverse the coup? Well, France tried every method, from building pressure to putting sanctions and ending aid to Niger. It even encouraged ECOWAS to put sanctions and threaten military intervention. However, nothing worked. And now, the French president decided that perhaps offering a bribe would be better. With substantial political and economic interests in the region, France has a track record of actively engaging in African political affairs. To wield influence and restore order, France offered a bribe to the junta, now in control in Niger, led by General Tiani. This bribe amounted to 60 billion CFA francs, roughly equal to $100 million USD. You should know that it's not being given as a financial aid to Niger, but only to junta leaders. In this way, France wants junta leaders to use this sum for themselves and give power back to Mohamed Bazoum instead of spending the money on public projects. The primary goal behind France's financial offer likely has two aspects. Firstly, to encourage the junta to reconsider its actions and revert to democratic governance. And secondly, to facilitate dialogue and negotiation to reinstate civilian authorities in Niger. This might sound too good, but the truth is that France wants a democratic leader back because he is easier to handle. France can get every work done through him because he never thinks about his people or country's prosperity. Therefore, he is never a democratic leader in the true sense. But why is no media house talking about this bribe offer? Initially, France's offer of financial aid to Niger's junta was kept tightly secret, with a concerted effort to maintain confidentiality. This secrecy was crucial to prevent premature disclosure that could disrupt ongoing diplomatic maneuvers. Given the sensitive nature of the offer and its potential impact on both nations involved, the stakes were extremely high. The decision to keep the offer secret was primarily motivated by the understanding that its exposure could invite intense scrutiny and speculation, particularly regarding the intentions of the French president. Any suggestion of using bribes to influence Niger's political landscape risked tarnishing France's reputation and casting doubt on its commitment to democratic principles. Furthermore, if the offer were to be revealed, it could lead to accusations of bribery, coercion, or unwelcome interference in Niger's internal affairs. Such allegations could strain diplomatic relations between France and Niger and provoke backlash from the international community, undermining France's credibility on the global stage. Additionally, public disclosure of the offer could have significant domestic consequences, potentially putting the French president at risk of impeachment if bribery allegations gained traction. The prospect of resorting to illicit methods to control another country's political trajectory would undoubtedly provoke public outrage and demand accountability from top leadership. However, despite meticulous efforts to maintain secrecy, the clandestine nature of the offer was compromised when officials from both Niger and France leaked the news. This unauthorized disclosure shattered the carefully constructed veil of secrecy, thrusting the offer into the spotlight and igniting a storm of controversy and speculation. In the aftermath, questions emerged about the true motivations behind the offer, the extent of French influence over Niger's politics, and the ethical implications of using financial incentives in diplomatic dealings. Another reason why this news was not reported is because of the strategy by which the bribe offer was presented. It was a sophisticated bribery strategy, where the French president avoided directly communicating the offer by utilizing intermediaries like private companies. This tactic serves multiple purposes, including providing reasonable deniability for the president and reducing the risk of direct implications if the offer were to become public. By engaging private companies as intermediaries, the French president creates a separation from the bribery attempt, making it challenging to directly tie the offer to the highest levels of the French government. What's more, conducting bribery through private companies adds a layer of discretion and confidentiality to the process. Unlike official government channels, private entities operate with more confidentiality and flexibility, making it easier to conceal the transaction's true nature and minimize the detection risk. Additionally, the French president introduces ambiguity into the offer by using indirect methods such as private companies or intermediaries for communication. If the bribe were to be exposed, the president could disavow any knowledge or involvement, citing the absence of direct communication or official channels. This complicates efforts to trace the offer back to the highest levels of power in France, further shielding the president from accountability. But how did Niger's military junta and General Tiani respond to the bribe offer? Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. General Tiani knew that the West had become accustomed to offering bribes because former African leaders actually took bribes. They were not ashamed of that, but it had to be changed. For example, Mobutu Sese Seko, who held power in Zaire, now referred to as the Democratic Republic of Congo, from 1965 to 1997, presents a notable case. During his rule, Mobutu accumulated significant personal wealth while the majority of the population endured poverty. Suspicions arose that much of this wealth was obtained through corrupt means, including accepting bribes from Western powers, notably the United States and Belgium. In return for financial aid and political backing, Mobutu aligned himself with Western interests in the region. This collaboration enabled foreign corporations to exploit Zaire's natural resources while maintaining a repressive regime that quashed dissent. Teodoro Obiang Nguema Mbasogo, who has served as president of Equatorial Guinea since 1979, emerges as another prominent figure. Equatorial Guinea boasts significant oil reserves, and Obiang and his family have faced allegations of embezzling billions of dollars in oil revenue for personal gain. Western oil companies operating in Equatorial Guinea have been implicated in facilitating this corruption by providing illicit payments to Obiang and his associates in exchange for access to the nation's lucrative oil fields. So, General Tiani had two options to reject the bribe. He could first accept it and then expose France openly, or he could simply reject the offer without letting anyone know. Well, he chose the second option. It's because if he had decided to expose it, France would have simply declined because private companies were used for the bribe offer. Therefore, General Tiani's discreet refusal of the bribe from France without publicizing it aligns with the aim of maintaining the integrity of African leadership. General Tiani chose not to disclose the bribe offer to avoid potential political unrest within Niger. Bringing attention to such a sensitive issue could have sparked internal upheaval, potentially destabilizing the country and undermining its governance at a crucial juncture. Furthermore, General Tiani likely considered the broader implications of revealing the bribe offer for Niger's international reputation. Publicizing the incident could have tarnished Niger's standing on the global stage, casting doubt on the nation's stability and integrity in the eyes of the international community. This could have adverse effects on foreign investment, diplomatic relations, and international aid, hampering Niger's socio-economic development. General Tiani weighed the potential impact of exposing the bribe offer on Niger's overall bureaucracy. If he had told them about the bribery offer, it would have meant that Niger's officials are susceptible to bribery, and perhaps they can accept it. But what did General Tiani do to avoid such events in the future? General Tiani demonstrated bravery by turning down the bribe extended to him. Nonetheless, his decision also laid bare deep-seated concerns regarding the susceptibility of his officials, spanning all levels, to the temptation to bribery. Recognizing the inherent risks associated with officials succumbing to such bribery offers, General Tiani realized the need to proactively address and prevent such occurrences. The apprehensions stemmed from the acknowledgement that bribery could persist as an ongoing threat, targeting officials across Niger. These bribes could tempt officials to divulge sensitive information or engage in actions detrimental to Niger's stability, particularly under the governance of the military junta. The potential fear of officials yielding to bribery could substantially undermine the junta's endeavors to stabilize Niger and uphold order. To counter this looming threat, General Tiani adopted a multifaceted approach to combat corruption within Niger's government. This approach included various measures aimed at reinforcing accountability, promoting transparency, and fostering a culture of integrity among officials. One conceivable strategy was the implementation of robust anti-corruption policies and legislation, complemented by rigorous enforcement mechanisms. General Abdourahmane Tiani formally established an anti-corruption commission and a state court in this regard. These transitional bodies were officially inaugurated during two ceremonies broadcasted on state television. During ceremonies, members of the newly formed bodies took an oath in the presence of General Tiani. Military officials, government representatives, traditional leaders, religious figures, and foreign diplomats attended the events in the capital city of Niamey. The newly instituted state court replaced the dissolved Court of Cassation and State Council, as stipulated in the order delineating public powers during the transitional period leading to elections. Besides discouraging officials from taking bribes from both internal and international sources, the Anti-Corruption Commission will recover unlawfully acquired and misappropriated public assets. This commission, which consists of judges, military personnel, police officers, and civil society representatives, aims to combat corruption across various governmental levels. Such measures would establish clear guidelines for ethical conduct and delineate consequences for transgressions, serving as a deterrent against engaging in corrupt practices. But why did the French president offer the bribe in the first place? France offered a substantial $100 million sum to the Niger military junta, purportedly aiming to overturn the coup and reinstall Mohamed Bazoum as the nation's leader. This offer holds significance not just due to its financial scale, but also because of its potential impact on Niger's political situation and France's interests in the region. Bazoum's possible return to power is perceived as aligning closely with French interests, particularly concerning resource exploitation. Under Bazoum's leadership, France enjoyed favorable terms and access to Niger's abundant natural resources, allowing French companies to exert influence and generate profits. This reflects a historical pattern where former colonial powers maintain economic stakes and influence in their former territories. However, the rise of the military junta presented a challenge to France's interests in Niger. The junta's control disrupted existing agreements or negotiations between Niger and French companies, potentially jeopardizing France's access to Niger's resources. Therefore, from France's perspective, incentivizing the junta to reinstate Bazoum through financial means could serve to protect French economic interests and maintain dominance over Niger's resources. However, it's crucial to recognize the ethical and legal concerns arising from offering a bribe to influence political outcomes in a sovereign nation. Such actions undermine democratic principles and sovereignty, potentially destabilizing the political landscape and fostering corruption. The revelation of such an offer could fuel anti-French sentiment within Niger and across Africa, escalating tensions and complicating diplomatic relations. It could also encourage other foreign entities to engage in similar practices, perpetuating a cycle of corruption and political instability in the region. So, is it true that other African military leaders were also offered bribes? As Niger's military leader received a bribe offer from France, it's probable that similar offers were extended to leaders in neighboring countries like Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso and Colonel Goïta of Mali. This notion arises from the interconnected nature of regional politics and the potential sway of external actors. Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali share close geographical proximity and often face similar political challenges, especially in governance, security, and economic advancement. Given this, it's reasonable to assume that France or other foreign powers might offer financial assistance or incentives to leaders in these nations to advance their own agendas. However, leaders like Traoré and Goïta might have turned down such offers because if they had accepted, we would have been seeing a totally different picture in these countries. But now, these leaders are prioritizing their country's autonomy and integrity over personal gains or external interference, leading them to reject offers perceived as compromising their sovereignty or undermining their domestic legitimacy. So, does it mean that France has failed to lure military leaders? Well, the answer is yes. Initially, France resorted to imposing sanctions on Niger, likely intending to coerce the government into reinstating Mohamed Bazoum. These sanctions included economic measures designed to weaken the government and compel compliance with France's demands. Upon the ineffectiveness of sanctions, France sought support from the economic community of West African states. ECOWAS put sanctions and threatened to intervene militarily. But instead of being feared, Niger's military junta prepared to fight, which shocked not only ECOWAS but France as well. Faced with the failure of diplomatic and international pressure tactics, France resorted to bribery as a last resort. The bribe offer aimed to persuade Niger's military leader to overturn the coup and reinstate Bazoum. Nevertheless, rejecting the bribe highlighted the military leader's integrity and reluctance to yield to external influence. With each attempt to sway Niger's situation blocked, France now finds itself in a challenging position. Exhausting diplomatic, economic, and covert intervention avenues necessitate a reassessment of strategy. Persistent external pressure to dominate Niger and reinstate Bazoum risks exacerbating tensions with Niger and other international partners. What do you think? What more tactics France will use to end junta rule in Niger? Or will Macron not be spared this time by French citizens for offering bribes to Niger's military junta? In the comment section right below, share your thoughts on the idea that the junta should have accepted the bribe and then exposed it instead of rejecting it initially. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.